Gonna take a couple minutes because I want to introduce kind of like this big overall series that we're gonna do. It has some smaller parts to it, but as a church, you may have seen, whether like you get our Trinity news, if you've seen announcements from the big church, we wanted to use the start of this year. We kind of came up with this thinking like, one, that the numbers and everything would be in this different place, but it still applies. Because as the new year starts, and as we kind of start this new season, kind of like making a New Year's resolution, as we talked about, we wanted to focus on this theme of revival. And I kind of mentioned this in the video. If you follow us on Instagram, I did like this woman, Devo, and I said at the beginning, like, I know I am feeling it, and I can just imagine like having to do school and everything that y'all are going through as well, that you're feeling, but like just maybe this like heaviness, this like maybe boredom with the way the situation is. Now, like, you just kind of want it to be over. You're kind of just tired of hearing bad news all the time. Maybe you've recognized in your life that the impacts that I've had, like, we're just kind of like don't want to do anything anymore. And like we've kind of gotten into this rhythm of like being used to just sitting at home, not being able to do anything, maybe not being able to connect with people, and just really kind of just trying to get through the day, right? And so we want to like use this theme because we see that effects, especially like in our faith as well, and just how we engage with God. But we wanted to use this theme of like revival, and revival has so many different like thoughts to it, and many different things. And like even if you think about like a New Year's resolution, as we talked about, like a resolution is kind of like a revival in its own. Like January 1st hits, and you think like, okay, this is a habit that I want to revive in my life. I want to revive healthy eating. I want to revive my time management so I'm not late. I want to revive like what kind of shows I watch. I want to revive how much I exercise or whatever. Like even a resolution in a sense is a type of revival that we face all the time, but there are all kinds of different examples of what revivals are in our world. Like we see it all the time with like movies and TV shows that like Hollywood people, they want to revive an old series, and so they bring it back or they remake it, or they do a sequel many years later, and so like they revive a series. We know revival like CPR, like if you know CPR, like doing CPR to someone, that revives them and brings them back to life, or brings them back to like consciousness or whatever. Revival in the church setting talks about like when it doesn't really happen now, maybe, or at least not kind of around here, but like churches will hold revivals, which is kind of like basically like a camp or a conference at the church, like where they'll bring in a speaker and like worship. It's all about like spreading the news to like everyone around us. Like there are all kinds of different things about revival means. And I want you to think about it in your life, and like what could revival mean for you? Because really, I think if we're honest with ourselves, kind of like how we talked about the resolutions, and I get it, because that's generally my attitude every year when it comes to New Year's as well. But just like the resolutions where it's like, no, there's nothing I want to revive because I really don't care, is probably our attitude deep down when we think about our relationship with God, or like how we engage with our faith. That our faith and like our relationship, our spirituality, our whatever, we're just kind of like, it is what it is. I didn't read my Bible, it's fine. I didn't pray, whatever, don't really care. Church, whatever. Like we probably have this attitude where it's just like, And like the worst part is like that we don't care about it. But what I want to think about, like when we think about revival, is that revival is bringing life back to something that has been lost. Something that has been lost, bringing life back to something, bringing life back to something in your life that maybe you've lost. Maybe you lost your energy, your desire to care about it, your attention to your faith, how much you read your Bible, how much you pray, how much you actually act on your faith, how much you actually know about God. Whatever it is that we have lost in our life, like we want to have this attitude of revival and bringing life back to those parts of ourselves that COVID 2020 has lost, because we've all lost something. We've all lost just kind of like an energy to everything. And so we got to bring life to it and say, okay, how can I make this new again? How can I make this energetic? How can I make this exciting? How can I bring life to that? And the first step to that, if we really need to recognize this and know that it's okay. It is okay to admit that there are parts of ourselves that have lost their lives. And I say that because a lot of times we don't, either recognize it like on accident, like we just don't pay attention that, oh, I've been sitting on the couch for 4 hours and I didn't think about it. Or we don't want to admit it to ourselves because we don't want to seem weak, or we don't have to actually work on anything. We don't want to move forward, or we don't want to admit that anything is wrong because that reveals something about ourselves. But really the part about this, just like making a New Year's resolution or just anything, is like we have to admit those parts of ourselves that have been lost and have become weakened, that have lost their life, that have lost their energy, that is not what we want it to be. We have to admit that, and it has to start there. And we're going to come work through this throughout the next few weeks, but I want you to just really start thinking and being okay with recognizing those weak spots that have lost their lives in your life. It's okay. It's okay to admit that maybe you've grown a little bit distant from God. Maybe your relationship with God is not where you thought it would be. Maybe your habits and the way that you invest in your faith is not where it used to be before. Maybe your attitude about what's happening in the world is apathetic, like you don't care. And it's okay to admit that. It's not okay just to like ignore it. So it's okay to say, like, this is the part of my life that I want to change. But what needs to come from that is that we have to recognize that it doesn't have to be that way. Because the parts of our lives that have been lost do not have to stay lost. Do not have to stay lifeless. Do not have to stay boring. Do not have to stay dead. Do not have to just stay where they are. The parts of our lives that have been lost are called to be made new and called to be made different and to be revived. And I think about that verse in John chapter 10:10. We talked about it a few times. Some of you may have heard of it. But Jesus is kind of talking about how he has come to be the shepherd for the people, and like how the sheep will know him, and how there are people who come in and try to take away the sheep. And he gives this one verse in 10:10. He says, "The thief comes to steal and kill and destroy. But I have come that you may have life and have it in abundance, have it in full." And he talks about these two situations that apart from Jesus, there are things that cause our life to be lost, that steal our life and our energy, our excitement, our desire to care away from us. But Jesus has come to make it live again, to make it full. That Jesus has come in to change the situation that you're in and make it good. To make it, to revive it. And so I want you to recognize as we kind of go through the series and just starting off here that Jesus has come to revive our lives to be something more than what they are now. It's not that Jesus says like, I have come to replace what has been stolen. He says, I have come to make it better for you. One of the parts about growing up, it was an exciting time in our lives, is we finally signed up for like homeowners renters insurance, because that's what you get to look forward to when you are older. Renters insurance, which basically means that like insurance will cover if anything happens to your house or like any of your possessions in there. So like if a pipe bursts and it floods, renters insurance will cover it and give you money to buy new things, or they'll help pay for some of the costs to like get it fixed. And this even happened to my brother-in-law, Jen's brother, and his wife. Like they came home from vacation, their house is like flooded, and but they had renters insurance, and so they came in and said, okay, how much is this worth? And what's really cool about insurance, and it's not like a scam or anything, they will give you money for like what it could be worth and not necessarily what you paid for it. So like say you found a couch on Craigslist or whatever at a yard sale for like $100, but the couch really is worth $500, they'll give you the check for like $500. And so then you have $400 extra, and then you could buy something better and new. This happened once as well, as like someone bumped into my truck, and like the insurance gave me the money to fix my truck, but like how much it cost versus like what I had to get was like different. It was better. And that's kind of what Jesus is saying, is like, hey, I am the insurance to your life, where it's not I'm just replacing the things that have been taken from you, that have been lost, but I have come to revive it and to make it better, to make it more valuable, to give it more than what it is worth, to give you so much more. And that's what I want our attitudes to be as we go into this new year. To examine your lives and say, okay, this is what has been lost, but then to like intentionally seek Jesus, to let him to come into that and to make it better than what it was before. And it's going to take hard work. It might mean like making some hard decisions, having some hard conversations with yourselves or with the people around you. And it's going to require being honest. It's going to be hard because it's easier to stay lazy. but to seek to revive the things that have been lost, that have lost their life, that have lost their energy, that have lost their wow. It takes work and effort. So I want you to intentionally make the work to examine where Jesus come into your life and pursue him in those to make your life better. That's what we're going to talk about. That's just kind of the introduction. Get that mindset, get that attitude going so that we can revive and have our lives changed for the good. And we're going to kind of walk through that throughout the next few weeks as we talk about what it means to have a revival in our lives. What I'm going to do now